Judicial Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here.
Alderman Lazara.
Here.
Alderman Sizmarsky. Alderman E. Wesley.
Here.
Alderman R. Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Winger. Alderman Woods.
Here.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, September 12th, 2014.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
No, what about opposed? You're not gonna check the opposed? You just-
Anyone want to oppose?
Just checking.
Okay, no. Okay, Chief, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Coming to you tonight, this is kind of really just a cleanup to streamline an approval process for raffles within the city. We recently had an inquiry about raffles and what would be required to get a license to do one. And it's kind of where it opened my eyes to see that right now it calls for every level of raffle has to be put on a city council agenda, report prepared, brought to you guys, and asked for approval. That basically alludes to anything from a $1 raffle to a $100,000 raffle. So what we'd like to do is handle these more administratively up to a certain dollar amount. I still think it would be appropriate for council review on a very large raffle. I put a suggestion in there of maybe up to $25,000 could be reviewed. Similar to how we review block permits and solicitor permits, we'd do a quick check to make sure that they fit the guidelines and then approve it administratively through the administration department. So the suggestion is up to $25,000. If you felt that was too low or too high, that would be fine. But so that's the first part of what we're looking to do, is just allow for administrative review of small raffle licenses. And then the second part is the code calls for every single level of raffle to also post a bond, a fidelity bond, to cover the cost of the winnings. That's not really practical for a $500 raffle or a 50-50 raffle at a baseball game or something. It doesn't make sense. There I'd be looking for a level of what you would feel comfortable. I said maybe over 10,000, but again, that could be higher or lower depending. But looking at some other towns' ordinances, that's kind of the threshold that they're following for some of these. And then if you had let's say a school was raffling off a car, that's a $30,000 car, council could still waive a fidelity bond in that case if they know the background of the person that's applying for it. So that's the two things we're looking to do, and I guess I'd be looking for any feedback, and then we'd prepare those changes in the ordinance for you.
Okay. Alderman Eugene Wesley.
I make a motion to approve the raffle code chapter 4, but I would also ask that the dollar amount that he put in there remain in there, to 25,000. It's a housekeeping.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
What do you mean?
Well, he put in, I'm sorry, it is, we were talking about, the chief was saying if we wanted to change a dollar amount. I'm not willing to change a dollar amount. Leave it.
Change the dollar amount of the bond or change the dollar amount of the?
Come to the council. Let the
Right,
staff
so
handle that.
we're gonna keep the amount that 25 is recommended by the chief,
Right.
and are we gonna change the threshold for the fidelity bond?
No,
Leave that at 10,000?
right.
Okay, thank you.
Is that where you went?
Yes. In looking at other towns, that seems to be kind of the route they're going to.
Another follow-up, okay.
Well, I wanna ask the chief a question.
Not me?
No, I don't wanna ask you a question. Maybe later I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
If I can come up with one.
Okay.
Would it make sense to keep those numbers the same? So maybe the threshold's 20,000 fidelity bonds, or 20,000, or 25, or 25?
We could keep them both at 25, and it would
I
probably
mean, we
lessen
haven't
the
had any
confusion a little
problems
bit.
or any
No.
issues, and typically if you get into these, they're done by the schools or the church. or
Right.
the VFW or something, and I guess anything done by some guy walking down the street, buyer beware.
Right.
I mean, it
No,
just-
I'd be completely
It-
comfortable with that. I was trying to find that level that you guys would be comfortable with too, that someone wasn't gonna get, basically.
Well, I think it's less confusing then, because most of it sounds like you wanna give the people in the community that have always done this, the opportunity to continue to do that. All they have to do is come in and say, we're doing it.
Correct.
And, you know, I know the VFW, some of theirs will go over 10,000
Okay.
with their calendar stuff and some of the other stuff that they do. So for me, it might make sense to keep that number the same. If we're okay with 25,000, maybe we make the fidelity bond issue the same 25,000.
So you're asking me to amend my motion?
I'm asking if that makes sense to everybody else, or I would like to amend it to that.
I have no problem amending the motion if keep the paperwork all the same. Secondary agree?
Question,
Wait a moment, whose meeting is this?
Well, we waiting for you.
I'm waiting, you just went in
will
here.
there be an extra cost if we up the bond part?
No, I
There won't be
don't-
no extra cost?
No, and the bond is something that they'd have to provide outside. I believe the cost for a bond on a $10,000, I was doing some rough numbers, $150. So it wouldn't cost the city anymore, and the purpose of this, cleaning this up, in the code right now, it costs $0 to get the permit through the city. We're not looking to add any fees on or anything, just kind of make the process more
And
streamlined.
the charity group won't cost them as much as far as getting the extra bond?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. Yeah.
First, let's see if you're,
Second.
seconder is willing to amend the motion.
Yes, I'm willing.
Okay, now we'll go back to questions. Okay. Oh, Alderman Jacobs.
I just had one question. On this section where it talks about ineligibility for license, the only one I really have a problem with, and I kind of told you about this earlier, is this one where it says any person who is not a good moral character. I mean, who decides who's a good moral character? I mean, that's my only issue with that particular line there.
Yeah, and I would just say, my kind of thoughts to that were, let's say it's someone that we're pretty familiar with around town that's been involved in different thefts or embezzlement, or, someone that came to us that we know has a long history of committing acts that aren't truthful, or, swindle, business disputes with people. That's probably something that I would recommend against approving. They could always, go beyond my level, but kind of like when the soliciting permits come around, we do a quick check to say, hey, have we had any issues, or does this person stick out to be a problem to us? We'd review it on that level, and before denying anyone, we'd be sure that, probably even talk with the city attorney to make sure we were fine with denying them, so.
Any more questions? Okay. Roll call?
Alderman Catalano,
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Lazara,
Yes.
Alderman E. Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman R. Wesley,
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
Items be considered future meeting, license plate reader. Anything else? Need a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I'd like to call the Public Works Committee to order. Roll call taker, note that the same people are here. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting for September 25th, 2014.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Report and recommendation, approval of partial payment number 10 to William Brothers Construction, Inc. for the NWWTP Upgrades Phase 1B project in the not-to-exceed amount of $2,744,714.68. That is my motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any questions? Eugene?
How many payments is this?
Go ahead, Matt.
This would be the 10th payment.
I understand, but how many payments will it be?
Will there pay?
Go ahead.
Yeah, as typical with a project like this, I'm not quite sure we would know the exact amount of payments. What we've covered in the past is making sure we put what the original contract value was, how much we paid to date, how much in retainage, and how much is remaining. As far as if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 payments left, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to predict.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Catalano,
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Lazara.
Yes?
Alderman E. Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman R. Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
And that passes. Report and recommendation, approval of final payment to CSR Roofing Contractors, Inc. for the City Hall roof repair project in the not-to-exceed amount of $104,014. That is my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, Eugene.
I have one question. Are we holding back any money at all in case this roof leaks?
James?
I mean, I know there's a warranty, but I mean, usually we hold back some money.
Yes, no, we're not holding back any money based on the warranty. So, and the work is complete and to the city's satisfaction already. So.
Okay, go ahead, Art.
Is the warranty the contractor's warranty or third-party warranty by the manufacturer?
Go ahead.
Yes, the manufacturer's warranty does cover the workmanship of the contractor and the materials from the manufacturer. So.
Go ahead, Tony.
So that means that the city did a final inspection on the roof?
Jamie?
Yes, that's true. The building department did, and they passed the inspections.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Lazara.
Yes?
Alderman E. Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman R. Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
And that passes. Let's see, report and recommendation approval of change order number 3 at the North Wastewater Treatment Plant in an amount not to exceed of $43,795. That is my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Take a roll call, please.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Lazara.
Yes?
Alderman E. Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman R. Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
And that passes. Report and recommendation, purchase and installation of parkway trees for the 2014 Fall Tree Planting Program in an amount not to exceed $15,108. That is my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Roy?
Yes. First of all, how many trees did we take down within the last year that needs to be replaced? When we were talking about the contract for taking down trees, Ward 4 were saying they need trees replaced from last year. So, number one, that's the first question. Second thing, I feel insulted of getting this in October, and we could have had this in probably August, and we're going into fall planting now. So I would like those questions answered.
Go ahead, Matt.
I do not have a number of exactly how many trees were removed last year. The number that we do have is 62, and those are the number of the trees that we can replace, which will get us up to having everything replaced prior to the beginning of this calendar year.
Matt, are these mixed trees?
Yes, there was a sheet within the packet. There's flowering pear, cedar hawthorn, Japanese lilac, frontier elm, American century linden, and swamp white oak trees.
Roy?
So why only 63, and you say we could only do how many?
There's 62 trees. Those are the trees that we need to do.
Okay, but you said we could only do 62.
Well,
Because of why?
currently, right now, that's our budgetary number. I mean, there are other trees that we have removed since the beginning of this calendar year that could be replaced, but we would like to wait until we have some tree code UDO modifications. Currently, the UDO only allows us to plant 12 different species of trees. And what we would like to do is expand the types of trees that we have. So this winter, we're going to bring UDO changes to the board and have that passed so that we can try for a spring planting of a wider variety of trees.
Go ahead, Roy, you gonna follow through?
So, you're saying we have to change the UDO, why can't we change that, like, next week or next month? I mean, this is ridiculous. 63 trees, we're a tree city. We need to add more trees here. I mean, and what committee does this have to go to? Does it have to go to a committee, or comes right to council?
Matt, go ahead.
Our plan is to take it through Streetscape Committee.
I'd rather just come to council with it. Or a committee,
Okay,
Well,
and
go ahead, Matt.
if we do bring it straight to committee, that would be at the end of October. It wouldn't get passed then until the beginning of November. And then to get, depending on what tree species are allowed, only certain tree species can be planted in the fall. And then we'd have to work with the contractor, again, to make sure what trees are available. And then also, what kind, I'd have to work with Brad and figure out what kind of money is available, since this will take us to the end of the budgetary amount.
in,
Okay, well, go ahead, Roy. We'll
in
give one.
return with that, are they gonna honor these prices at 230, 235 for the spring too? Most likely, these prices are gonna go up in the spring, according to nurseries, and that's how they operate. They wanna clear these out of the lot in the fall, and they wanna get it off their property so they can plant new trees. So, are they gonna have these prices? Again, I find it insulting that we're getting this at this time. It should have been months before. You can't tell me St. Albert does not know what they're gonna put on sale or what trees we're gonna get.
Go ahead, Matt.
These prices are for this fall, not for next spring. That's what they were asked. We asked them for pricing for the fall. Due to us being traditionally a fall-only tree planting city, that's why we brought it to you at this time, so we can turn around and have it planted right around the end of this month. They said that they would be able to get us in towards the end of this month, 1st of November, which is a fine time to plant trees. So,
Yeah, I think it touches some of the same things that Alderman Wesley was, I mean, we talked at the committee to increase the amount of trees that were planted. We haven't planted robustly in a couple of years, and we obviously stepped up not only for years that we were taking down trees, but stepped up taking them down. At some point, we need to plant them. St. Auburn, I think, probably 3 communities that I know of have deals with them, multi-year deals to commit to, we're gonna plant 500 trees. If they put that together, are we in talks to do any of that so that we can get this price? And then, before you get into that, didn't we just go through the codes for what trees we would plant a couple of years ago, and now we want to change them again? 3 years ago? I mean, what drastically changed in 3 years to warrant that? I mean, I just want to move forward.
Go ahead, Matt.
I'll answer the second question first. What drastically changed? Well, one, it's me being employed here, and as well as Ken. We are both have a long use of different types of trees that we'd like to see within the municipality. Right now, we have about 50% of our trees are maple trees. We find that that's very concerning to us, and we'd like to expand the realm of trees that we can plant. That's what happened 2 or 3 years ago. I can't explain what happened then. What we feel like that wasn't what should have been done. So that's why we want to bring it through the UDO and the tree code process again. The things that you talked about with St. Albans, I have worked with them in the past. I had a contract with them to plant 2,000 trees for me. The problem with that is there's several different ways. You can either just say, okay, these are the trees we want in the future, how much the price is going to be, or you can do a harvesting and planting agreement with them, which is a longer process because you buy the trees like in year 1, but you wouldn't actually plant them within the city parkway until year 6, because they buy them bare roots and grow them for you. So you basically rent a plot of land from them. So to do something like that is a very long and drawn out process. Not something that I would suggest us doing, because cutting down the 400 ash trees that basically are going to be removed from the system over the course of the next three or 4 months, what we would rather do is through the budgetary process, come back with a number that says, we would like to plant 100 trees in the spring, or 150 trees in the spring, 150 trees in the fall, and another 100 trees the next year, next spring, and be done with the reforestation of the ash tree issue. So, but that needs to be brought through, I think, the budgetary process, because that's going to be a big number. It's not just the 15,000. I mean, we're talking probably 20, 25, 30,000 a pop for each season, and then doing 60,000 in a year instead of 15. That's going to be a pretty big expanded level item that we need to talk about.
You got to follow them. Go ahead.
Yeah, so then, going back to getting the trees approved, how fast can you put that together? I mean, I don't see that should take too long, even if you went to streetscape and then brought it to committee right away. So
Go
that
ahead,
we
Nick.
don't,
You can bring
Yeah,
it 2
well,
weeks.
when the next streetscape meeting is November?
Yes, sir.
So it's in November. So we wouldn't be able to do anything for this fall, anything more for this fall. It'd have to be in the spring.
so if we brought it straight to committee, as one alderman's recommending, that would be
2 weeks.
So we're gonna save essentially 2 weeks. Is
We-
that gonna get it done?
We may be able to do it within, but I wouldn't feel comfortable bringing it forward that quickly.
Matt, Jeff, go ahead.
Well, 2 things to think about too. As Matt said, this will bring us up to date with what we did previous to this ash tree removal. I think this has to go to CDC, because it's a UDO change. We can keep the same species as we are now, then we wouldn't have to go to CDC. And if you guys wanted to go over the budget, I suppose we could, that would be the quickest way to do it. Keep the same tree species if that's what you guys want, and then we can do that now.
Go ahead.
What are we gonna add? You already have an idea what it is that you wanna do. I don't think that you're gonna go out and do a 6-month research project. So you already know what inventory, you said you have experience with that. How many of the trees on the list do you wanna get rid of, and how many you can add, whatever. I don't think we need to have long, drawn-out meetings.
No, I mean, it's probably not going to be what types of trees. A lot of what we would probably ask for is the right to select trees that are on IDOT's approved parkway tree list that they approve every year, or is something like that, instead of saying these 15 species or these 30 species. Allow us to utilize like Morton Arboretum's salt-tolerant parkway tree list that they provide. And then however that modifies, then we can modify it without having to make a UDO change. We just correlate it with some other entities out there. But I don't know if the council would like that. That's kind of, I'm just shooting from the cuff right now. That's what we were kind of talking about, not a list of these 30 trees, but using someone else's wider list. And then if changes are made to that list, we don't have to come back every time to change it from a, red spire linden to a green spire linden.
Well,
Go ahead.
then it would probably be easier to rewrite it saying the only tree we can't use is a Dutch elm tree. Or something else. I mean, that's what it sounds like you want.
No,
And then as seasons change or times change or IDOT changes or whatever practices for maintaining roads and clearing snow and ice change, those trees may change, I just don't think this is something we need to change every 2-3 years. If you want to make it more broad, then make it broader.
Okay, Eugene, you had a question?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Those are 63 trees that we are guaranteed.
62 trees,
Do
yes.
they have any trees left? If we go ahead and ask for another 50 and up this price?
Go ahead.
Yes or no?
Well, we would have to ask them what species they have available. I mean, I can't tell you right now if Todd's got an extra 20 flowering pears. I'm sure he does,
Well, here's
but,
the thing where I'm coming from. are these the trees off, I'm sorry. can I-
No, go ahead.
Is these also the trees that are going along the tracks?
No.
So
It has
that's
nothing
a
to- It
separate,
has nothing to do with this.
and when are those trees going to play?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, that is a whole different conversation that, long and convoluted.
Yeah, but we know for sure they're not connected.
Okay, so my question is, I'm in favor, and I kind of agree with the conversation that's been going on up here. We took down quite a few trees. And again, there's trees that have been down in my ward that we haven't replaced for several years now. So my suggestion is if the council will approve, instead of $15,000, and everyone's going to say to me, we don't have it in the budget, and don't sit there and tell me we don't, because there's money in that budget. Okay? So my suggestion is that we up this tree planting on this motion tonight, of add additional $10,000 to tree planting. So we up it to $25,108 for this year, if the trees are available to get out and plant more than 63 trees for this cycle. Because I will tell you, we already saved money somewhere else in this city. Don't tell me there ain't no money there, because I guarantee you there is.
So at $10,000 more, how many trees is that,
Maybe
Matt?
another 50 probably.
Another
Yeah,
50?
It'd be about another 50 trees, but I think where I'm having a struggle with just going ahead to, and I would love to take another $10,000 on for these trees, is the UDO process. And that's the issue that we're having.
Okay.
Is that I need that changed in order for us to do what we need to do to make our urban forest more
All
diversified.
right, so maybe we're not ready to do that. Mayor?
All right, couple things. Number one, we're talking 62 trees here, and then you're talking about 150 next spring or whatever. Why can't you push this number up to 150 trees now with the trees that we have on the list? And then you can go on to the UDO and add a few extra trees. I mean, we had a long discussion about 4.5 years ago about how many trees, you know, and I understand we don't want to plant, like right now, we have some streets that are completely devastated and have no trees left. So I don't see if we have a problem. We upped, 80,000? That included taking trees down and adding trees. So if you add 30 extra thousand here right now, so next year, instead of doing 80,000, that'll be a budget question anyways, you can bring it down to 55 or 50 if the council so wishes to make up that 30,000, or they just leave it at 80,000 and get it all planted next year. We have 12 trees on the list. You can put trees around the entire city. I mean, there's some blocks that are just, they look bare now. There's nothing left. So I don't see why we couldn't just find out what they have, and by next week, at the council level, bring in another, we don't have to go 10, we can go 25,000 or double this. Or just make it 40,000, whatever.
Jeff, do you have some?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where Matt's coming from, where staff's coming from. We see the demand from council, obviously, they're getting a lot of feedback from the residents, they're not happy, they want the trees, they've been down for a while. We're addressing the ones that have been down for a while with the 62, but that being said, the ones we just cut down, I'm sure you're gonna get the phone calls from those residents saying, now I gotta wait a year until these trees come in, I gotta wait all season. So, I mean, judging from your guys' responses and what you're hearing from your residents, I would just say that, I talked to Matt, we've got about 100, ballpark around 100 additional trees that we've taken down in the ash tree program, or random trees that have died after the 62 trees. So if we just bump it up to a not to exceed 50, we'll get those 100 knocked out, and then we'll be, you know, good to go for any future code changes, and we'll take care of all those ones that we just cut down.
Okay, so did we have a motion yet on any of this? So what?
Yes, we did.
We did?
You made the motion, and
Okay, so
Alderman Catalano
what we
seconded.
want to do then is to change the motion to not to exceed 50,000? Is that okay with the second? Okay. Can we just do roll call on this?
Wait,
please?
wait.
No,
We
no.
have more?
No, I got more questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had one question. I'm all for all the trees and everything. Did we have an arborist or somebody pick these trees? I mean, these trees, none of these trees are susceptible to disease like the ash tree or a lot of
Right.
extra maintenance on any of these trees?
Every
Go ahead,
tree's
Matt.
disease.
The trees that are on this list from St. Albans, no, these are trees that are traditionally been good parkway trees. Are they susceptible to illness? I want to say no, but ash trees weren't susceptible to illness 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and look at where we're at now. So,
Go ahead, Phil.
What about the maintenance on them? Are they pretty much the same as now?
yeah, pretty
Okay,
much the same.
Thank you.
Questions? Go ahead, Roy.
Again, if we got this earlier, we pay staff very well here. It should have came earlier, we wouldn't have this problem, change ODA or whatever you want to call it. Why can't we bring it to the council to change it next week? I don't care, I really don't care if you guys work night and day. We got to get it done.
Go ahead, Chuck.
We heard you loud and clear. We understand the residents are out there giving you phone calls. We're gonna change it over the winter, and we're getting all the trees, 100 more trees, the ones that are down now, addressed with our current trees. So there's no need for a change now. You're not gonna have those resident phone calls, because you're gonna get the trees that are down now planted.
Miss,
Go ahead, one more.
that's it, one more, and that's it. Mr. Manager, you're the manager here. If I get something like this again in the, like, last minute, this should have been done months ago.
Okay,
You
Eugene,
should have
go
been
ahead.
aware of it.
So, let me make sure we get this straight. So we are upping this, is there a dollar amount?
Not to exceed 50,000.
So the total is 50,000,
Well, not to exceed, right?
not to exceed 50,000. So he's going to go out and call this place and buy as many trees as he can for 50, not to exceed 50,000. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, take roll call.
Mayor?
One real,
Call the question.
hold on one second. Jeff, you mentioned that we took down 100 trees after those other trees, but since we started this year, I mean, there were some streets, Elizabeth Court, I think Paramount, I think they got wiped out. I think it's Paramount was the other. I mean, those streets. So if those, where those 100 trees were, there was one tree here, one tree there, we might want to concentrate some of these trees in an area that has nothing right now, so just to get them started.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to go out, and staff will have to do some work to figure out where these 100 trees are going. Obviously, we know where these 62 are going, the additional ones, where it's gonna take some time to figure out where they're gonna go. But yeah, we'll make sure that the trees, that the streets that were devastated, we try to repopulate those to the best of our abilities.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Right, and that's all I'm saying, is because those other 100 trees that might have came out after the 62, could be a couple here and there throughout the entire city, but you got some blocks that were just wiped out there, you know, on the, especially on the west side of town, there just looks terrible.
They're gonna do the one.
You're not gonna beat them
No,
up
no,
anymore,
no,
right?
this is it.
Okay, okay.
The
Go ahead.
ones that died over the year, are they replacing these?
Yes. The ones from last year that were last fall planting, there's a 1-year replacement on those, so yes, those will be replaced.
Could I get a list of the ones that are being replaced on what houses? Because there are some trees on Elizabeth Court.
Can we do that? Matt, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I
Okay.
guess so.
Okay. Art?
I just want to go back to your last
Okay.
statement that we've got a 1-year.
Warranty.
The trees that we planted on Irving Park Road recently, were those 2-year warranty?
Ms. Hennigan, yes? Yes, those, yes, I guess so.
So why can't we get 2-year, is there a price difference? I mean, 2 sounds better than 1, correct me if I'm wrong.
I've worked at St. Albans for 15 years, and St. Albans has always been a 1-year warranty, always. I mean, if you got 2 years, they use a different company than St. Albans.
I believe this might be the difference between public works staff planting the trees and having the contractor do the trees? Okay, so, never
So if
mind.
if the contractor does it, is it a 1 year or 2 year?
Well, hers was a 2-year, but you guys were, that contract was through a different company than St.
Okay.
Albans.
Okay.
So,
I mean, in the future, I guess we can look at using other people. St. Albans, we have always used you guys have used St. Albans for years and years and years here, probably the last 10, 15 years. St. Albans has been the tree nursery of choice for Wooddale.
Go ahead, Eugene.
okay, that raises a question now. Because let me just tell you one thing. We have sat up here numerous times, and just because we are so comfortable with one company or one person, we keep going back to that same thing. And you know darn right well, if you keep using the same company, they are not going to sharpen their pencil. They're going to figure that we are here, we will get this order every time. So my suggestion is next time we go through this thing, is that we call some other companies and get the other prices too. Because a lot of these people know that they don't sharpen their pencils. They just figure, oh, we're gonna get this, we'll just leave the prices and don't give us a deal. She got a 2-year contract for 2 years trees. Now I'm going to a 1 year, so I went down, but we used the other outfit. I don't wanna delay this project, let's get this project over, but I think we need to look at that.
Okay, Matt, in other words, we'd like to see you shop a little bit.
We can shop around in the spring when we
Okay.
do that. But these prices are extremely good pricing with planting. These are extremely good prices.
Doesn't say that we don't have to go back to them, but give me some other prices.
Mayor, do you have a question?
Actually, as soon as I heard that you called him first, otherwise I was gonna say the same thing.
Oh, okay,
We should be.
okay. All right, any other questions? Can we do a roll call?
50,000.
Alderman
Right, not-
Catalano,
It's not to exceed 50,000.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano,
Yes.
Alderman Jacob,
Yes.
Alderman Lazara,
Yes?
Alderman E. Wesley,
Yes.
Alderman R. Wesley,
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
And that passes. Items to be considered at future meetings. 2015 Sidewalk and Street Engineering RFP Award, October 23rd. Tree Code Update, October 23rd. Switch Gears Purchase, October 23rd. PRV Purchase, October 23rd. And GPS, November, December. Anything else? Go ahead, Eugene.
I really like to know the outcome or what's going on with that Potter Street project with those trees, because let me tell you one thing. If that money is not in, if those trees are not planted this year, according to our policy, that money is no longer available to plant those trees because that account goes down to zero.
Jeff, you want to answer that?
Yeah,
So,
we're well aware of that policy, and there's been a couple updates in the packets in recent weeks. I don't know if it was in this past week, but it's been in there. There's a couple snags, we're trying to work through them, but we're well aware of the policy. So if it's not expended this year, then obviously the council would have to decide if they want to reallocate the money.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, what I think I'm understanding is that the quiet zone is having an effect on where we put those trees. And I think that's what's delaying it. Jeff, am I pretty right on it?
Quiet zone is playing a factor.
Okay. All right, anything else? Make a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Meeting adjourned.
I'll call a finance committee to order, make the minute taker note, the same people are present. I need a motion to approve September 11, 2014 minutes.
I would make that motion.
Do I have a second? Corrections, changes, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item will be the report and recommendation of a staffing study. Who's taking it? Mr. Brad Wilson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may recall, a number of months ago, staff solicited bids to do the staffing study that was included in this year's CIP. The GovHR USA was selected as the winning firm, and Mr. Carl Nullenberger here and Eric Anderson. I had Eric. Eric Anderson were the two primary leads on the engagement, and they're here this evening to present kind of the psychology behind the study and some of the major findings. You did have the study, I think, the last 2 weeks in the packet. Their PowerPoint slides were included this past week, and so like I said, they're here to go through all that. And I'll leave the Q&A timing up to them if they want to take questions during the presentation or after. I'll leave that up to them. But if it's okay with you, I'll turn it over to Mr. Nullenberger and get
So
going.
how are we gonna do the questions? Are you going to allow them to go as we go through, or how would you want to do it?
As we go through.
Okay, so if you guys have any questions, raise your hand and then we'll let them get the answers. Hey, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, just the one other quick thing, as I alluded to in the packet a couple weeks ago and in the memo today, I think we should all use common sense. There's some potential for some sensitive questions throughout the course of the study, and I think some of the questions are more a general overview, or some of the presentation is more of a general overview, and then some more in-depth discussions on particular points within the study are more appropriate for a different forum. So I think we should use some common sense with that.
Will they be invited back to the different forum?
Well, I mean, we can talk about that after the presentation. It's
Okay.
nothing we have to hash out right
Thank you.
now, so.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we did go into it in depth, the staff, so that they have a broader depth of knowledge of it also, so that they can follow up with you. I
Okay.
just want to point out also that in addition to Eric and myself, we also had Lee McCain working with us in the police area. He's a retired police chief. And we had Jerry Schultz working with us in the information technology. He's an expert in the information technology area, which I don't purport to be, so. Okay, so overall, as you can see, the study covered all these different areas that are listed. You've received a copy of the report and have had time to read it, so I'm not going to read each one of those to you, but I will just do a brief overview of the different areas in order to give you an idea of what we thought were the important areas. And as an introduction, obviously, the report, as indicated by Brad, was a study to investigate and assess and recommend revisions where necessary to the organizational components and the processes and positions and staffing, along with corresponding policies and procedures and systems. We learned that there is a high expectation of customer service here in Wooddale to its citizens. And our findings are that Wooddale offers a high level of city services at a cost that's comparable to other cities. The next slide is and it's on page 5 in your report, and a bit bigger picture. It's the strategic management plan that we think shows what's an excellent way of doing strategic management in a local government. And you can see all the elements of it that are there. And I guess I want to point out to you that here in Wooddale, you do the comprehensive plan that was adopted in '97 and updated in 2003. You've done the Thorndale Corridor Master Plan adopted in 2009. You've done the Vision Plan 2013 for the next decade. You've done the Strategic Plan 2015 adopted in 2013, which includes the mission and vision and operating philosophy and has 9 strategic priorities. You've done a 5-year capital improvement plan. You do financial trend monitoring program, monitoring your finances, as well as have adopted some very excellent fiscal policies. You do an annual budget that's inclusive and very understandable, and it's based upon the strategic plan that's adopted by the council. You have performance achievement reporting included in the budget. You put together a popular annual financial report that's understandable for people to read. You have monthly department reports, you have weekly city manager reports, and you have bi-monthly community newsletters with the districts. I say all that because you have excellent, excellent strategic planning. You're one of the very few cities that encompass all elements of strategic planning into your process. And that speaks very well for the policymakers in this city and the element of the management that advises and works with the policy leaders. Because the policy goals are used for guiding administrative processes, and there's excellent communication taking place in those areas. We looked at the organizational management. Obviously, you operate under the council manager form, the city manager supervising and coordinating the activities of all the departments. The only element in there we would suggest is you consider whether you should adopt home rule. Most cities like to have home rule in order to help make the decisions relating to that area. Yes, sir.
My question is, why did the home rule come in play? Did you not see, well, according to,
It comes into play because it gives you more discretion in making decisions as opposed to having to follow the very specificity of state laws on every issue. So it provides you, the policymakers, more discretion in decision-making on a regular basis.
I will tell you, face out here, I don't think home rules will ever fly here, knowing that the next town over to us put on the ballot for 4 times.
If the policymakers here make the decision you don't want home rule, then you've made the decision essentially. So that's the same issue.
It's, but,
Okay.
Is-
Alderman Roy Wesley.
it's not our decision, it's the people's decision because.
I understand, but you
Okay.
can put it on the table
Put it on
for
the
the
ballot. Okay.
citizens to make that decision. You've made the decision not to initiate, I guess I would say, the home rule aspect.
Okay, thank you.
Your choice, ultimately, but
I have to-
we looked at the financial aspects of the city to see how well it was being managed financially. The expenditures per capita are below comparable cities. In a study that we did a few years back, we did comparable cities in this population size, and you can see that you're below the comparable cities, and your expenditures per capita have actually decreased slightly over the last 3 years. We also took a look at your fund balances to see what kind of financial condition you're in, and you maintain financial fund balances over 90% in recent years, even despite the recession, the Great Recession. Our comparable city fund balances are in the 40% range, and you're in excellent overall financial condition, so we have no concerns over the management of your overall finances. We looked at staffing levels and workload measurement. We did comparisons, as you note in the study, to other cities in the area of a comparable nature. And that became the beginning portion for us to do further operating department analysis. And then we also did some performance data comparison in order to assess how you're doing compared to other cities. And as you can, one of the elements in there, I'll just point out to you that was in there, is that you, for instance, you're issuing like 60% more permitting process than cities of comparable size due to the nature of your city and the development that's taking place. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, we probably just went right over it. On page 14, you talked about Wooddale raised less revenue per capita than comparable cities, but you're saying that's because fire and parks are separate districts. I mean, if you added those in, then
You
are
would
we
still be,
comparable?
you would still be slightly below is what we calculated.
So it's-
We could give you
So
those
it's cheaper
defined
for
numbers if
residents
you'd
to
like.
live in Wooddale? Is that what you're saying?
Even if you added those in, you'd still be below the comparable cities.
No.
We did an employee survey of all employees, and I had the opportunity to fill out the survey anonymously, and they got the survey with a stamped envelope, and they could mail it directly back to us, so that there was an anonymous employee survey. The employee survey essentially had 7 major findings. City's workforce is significantly invested in their employment with the city and very committed to the improvement process here in Wooddale. The city's employees feel on the whole very positive about their employment here with the city of Wooddale. The city of Wooddale ranks considerably well when compared to benchmark data of other cities. We had, in some of the questions, we had benchmark data of surveys that have been done in other communities around the United States, and we compared Wooddale against that, as you can see in that section of the report, and Wooddale ranks very well. Finding 4 was while 44% of the employees responding felt the city recognized their work efforts, 46% disagreed, and perhaps programs can be put together to help further recognize employees for their work efforts. Number 5 was while 77% of the employees felt that they received training needed to perform their job well, which is a good number. That still leaves some opportunities there to provide additional training opportunities for employees. Number 6 was about 28% of the employees felt that the city elected officials clearly communicated goals and priorities, while 47% felt that they did not. And perhaps there can be additional communication tools put together to clearly articulate that, because the policymaking body here has adopted outstanding strategic planning situations, and the employees would like to know more about it, is the bottom line. And then finding number 7 is while 38% of employees felt that steps were taken to deal with poor performers, 56% felt steps were not taken. And obviously that could be additional training to deal with that issue amongst the management employees. And that leads a little bit into this next step, because we met also with the,
We have a question here.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Can we go back to that last slide?
Watch your line on this one.
Yeah, I want to talk about number 6 a little. And I'm going to let you answer that.
I'm sorry?
Number 6, it says 28% of employees feel that elected officials clearly communicate, and 47% feel they do not. In our form of government, how do you, in your profession, how do you feel that we could change that number?
What frequently happens is city councils work with the city manager and staff to create a communications tool so that all policies that are adopted by the council, all practices that are adopted by the council, make sure you get those communicated directly to the frontline employees as well as middle management, and usually management employees get them from the city manager meeting with them at department head meetings and such.
Okay.
I have one question. I noticed in the survey, going through the survey, you interviewed our employees on surveys, you interviewed our staff. Is there a reason why non-elected officials were involved in this process and give you our intake on some of this stuff? Is there?
It was not requested in the request for proposals that the elected officials be involved in that part of the process.
So again, I will back up here. So am I saying our staff at our proposal asked you in their plans not to ask the elected officials any questions? Is that what I'm hearing here?
They did not specifically say don't do it, that they did not include that in the element of the study that we put the proposal in for. So we did not allocate additional time for that element.
My question to my staff then is why was that not put into the scope of work?
If I might,
Oh, go ahead.
if I might respond also, we were asked to do a management study, so we really confined ourselves to the management side of the table as we went through and did this. And I don't think it's so much characterizing what the staff asked for or didn't ask for in the sense of, to speak to you or to others on the policy board, it was a management study, so we focused on the management side of the table.
Well, then I will ask you something off after the meeting.
Okay.
That's fine. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. On the intergovernmental cooperation, we met with the heads of the library, parks, and fire districts and talked with them about the interrelationships. There's a real good history of cooperation between the city and those districts, along with monthly meetings of the city manager and the district heads and so forth. Additional opportunities that we saw were potentially a joint purchasing efforts to increase the size of purchases, which sometimes reduces the cost of those specific areas per item. And the other we looked at was, especially relating to the employee survey, for additional training was potential for joint training program for city and district employees. The library district was very, very supportive of hoping to see something of that nature going forward and housing it there, even at the library area. So, in terms of the operating department analysis, which we did after doing that staffing analysis, where we compared to other cities, for the 6 different areas, we looked at administration. We found it was slightly high in staffing, and we suggested the one adjustment in the report in light of that to combine the 2 positions into one.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Before we go into these departments here,
I'm sorry?
before we go into these departments here, these are input of the manager of that department, correct?
Not only.
Okay.
If
I'm
I-
trying, I'm trying to get, I know it's a manager's, not a department head's thing, but I'm trying to figure out how you're gonna determine these things and how you gain your information. Is that a fair question?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what we did, first off, is looked at the staffing analysis compared to this city compared to the other cities. And when you look at that, you could see there are some areas that stood out as being different staffing levels here than in other cities. Then what we did is, we literally met with each department head. We met with, I can't think of the total number, it's in the report, like 33 employees that we directly interviewed and talked with throughout the city organization in order to assess what our preliminary findings were and to refine our findings and to get a better feel for those particular areas. So we did it via one-to-one communication with employees, pledging confidentiality to each one of them. We met in that room right next door to you there and wherever necessary, and to get that information. So we expanded upon the employee surveys as well as the staffing analysis, and then we met with the employees to get a better assessment of what we felt were the best practices and what could be done differently.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So that was the administration one. The finance, we suggested that transferring the payroll portion of the HR position that we suggested eliminating down to finance and increasing their staffing by 1/2 to account for that. In community development, because of the levels of activity, they're slightly understaffed by 1/2 to 1 position, even though, and as you can see from the performance measure that was included in the performance measurement area. One of the areas we mentioned there too is that the amount of revenue that you're bringing in from community development fees and permits is less than what it's costing you to enforce those. So we suggest you strongly take a look at increasing those fees, whether it's viable or not. Because in essence, I guess I could say you're subsidizing the development and the fees, and it ought to be at least be equal, which was over $100,000. I don't remember the exact number by now, but it was enough to be something to take a look at, to increase fees. And we felt that the potential impact of the Elgin O'Hare project was such that it could increase those activities even further and create some additional dilemmas. And the public works analysis?
Was the portion of the study that I focused on as we went forward and came out with several findings and recommendations. Probably the most important finding was the fact that the Public Works Director position has turned over, I believe, 3 times in the last 5 years. Is that correct? And that discontinuity of leadership has impact within the department. By addressing that and maintaining the stability of that leadership goes a long way to begin to deal with the other things that we found in recommendations that were made. First recommendation is that there needs to be a more comprehensive training program. There are several areas, and as I talked to employees and asked them for the kinds of training they had and what they had and where they were certified, there are certain kinds of training certifications, if you will, that increase the employee safety, that make them more efficient, but also provide you a great deal of protection should something terrible happen. The one that I focused on was enclosed spaces. And several employees had training in enclosed spaces. It's a very dangerous place when you're working in a sewer, when you're working in any kind of a space like that, and particularly where you can get toxic fumes. I've had the unfortunate experience of having a contractor lose 2 people on a job in the city that I worked in. And so I'm perhaps more sensitive to that than I might otherwise be. But if you get the right training systematically through the department on an issue like that, and something happens, you're protected. Your liability is less because you've taken the steps to get people certified. And so if something happens, you haven't just sat back and let it happen. You actually took steps to prevent it. And that's critically important, not only for the individual employees, but also in the legal system. It's terribly important. So that as part of a comprehensive training program is something that needs to be focused on. I don't want to leave you with the idea that your people aren't trained. They are trained, but I think if the Public Works Director, new Public Works Director, approaches that systematically and comprehensively, he can do a great deal, not only for his people, but for his department, for the people of the city, and for yourself.
Okay, I'll take Mr. Jacob, Peter Jacob.
Yes, sir.
The one question I had is, you did mention the Public Works Directors, we've been through a few, but if there's lack of training, I mean, I would imagine our Public Works Director or somebody, one of the hierarchy over there should bring that forward, and I haven't seen that in any of the three, directors that we've had as far as some of the training you're talking about.
That's the recommendation that we're making to the Public Works Director, to the city, and it is our hope that it'll go forward. The second is, oh, I'm sorry, yes,
Mayor, please.
Yeah, I have a question for you on training. Page 36, you talk about cross-training among employees helps provide the best level of service on a continuing basis.
Yes.
When you say cross-training, I mean, I think we've asked this question a couple of times, and it becomes a union conflict that, maintenance worker 1 can't do maintenance worker 2. How do we correct that problem and get some of that cross-training?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Well,
There's-
because I really like the idea because, people get sick, something happens.
Mayor, I have brought that up for several years.
Well, I
and
know,
have not
we've
seen
discussed,
it.
and, I mean, you put it here, but
It's a difficult issue with the unions, and I think it takes a good deal of negotiation to, at the table, to bring them to a recognition of the benefits that has for them. If it's restricted simply to jobs, to 2 jobs, and so that they can be interchangeable, that's one kind of cross-training, but you can also get other kinds of cross-training in terms of health and safety and things like the enclosed spaces where you can train people who may not indeed be assigned to closed spaces, but may have to respond to enclosed spaces. And those are the kinds of things where you can take it forward and sort of bring the culture forward a bit at a time. It's almost impossible to do it overnight. It's a very difficult problem, but it can be done, taken in reasonable pieces as you go forward.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
It's kind of odd that you bring up the enclosed spaces, because I just had training on that with the Forest Preserve, and I don't know if you work with the Forest Preserve or not, but I guess this question is to our finance guy. Does our insurance company supply training tapes, seminars, or whatever that could come out to the city and do these things? I mean, I think I'm heading down the right track of what this gentleman's saying. If I'm not, please tell me I'm not.
Mr. Wilson.
Sure. Yes, they do. They provide various training services, and our previous insurance company did as well. I just, since I have the mic now, I believe Mr. Anderson's comment was to expand the training. I mean, there's a training matrix for each guy in Public Works and when their enclosed training is up. And so the guys that do it regularly are on a regular schedule. But I think in the realm of cross-training as well, it could be expanded to more people. So I think, we could certainly take a look at expanding all those programs through the insurance company, through their offerings. They have been out and done a few trainings for us already. So we have been utilizing them to some extent so far.
I look at this and saying, we should be training maybe once a month, at least an hour a month, at least with each employee, if not more. But they might not say they're getting their work done, but the first thing is safety.
Okay.
So,
Jacob.
Do you have a list of what other things besides enclosed space, that training that you guys would like to see?
just use that example.
I think it's fair to say that, and this ultimately is going to come back to the council, because this training is ultimately going to cost money, and it has to be appropriated for it, and it is important. But I think it really is more appropriate for the Public Works Director and the management staff in the city to analyze what is there and decide what it is that they need and what it's going to cost and bring it to you at some point. I can't, in the short time that I've had, come up with a comprehensive list of all of the training that I think is necessary. But having been a city manager in a number of different cities, there's no doubt in my mind that a comprehensive program will improve the situation, at least insofar as I've been able to read it here. And I don't admit to that being perfect, but it is as best, I think, as reasonable as can be done. So I would...
Mayor, please.
You have a follow-up, Pete? So when you say a comprehensive plan, you're talking about comprehensive plan on cross-training or?
Total. Training.
Just training totally?
Training in total, yes. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood correctly.
Mr. Jacob?
Yes, sir.
Are there any municipalities out there that you would say has the type of things we should be looking at that you've dealt with or advised in the past?
The communities that I'm familiar with in this area was Evanston, and it was almost 20 years ago. We did have a training program there, and it was conducted on a regular basis. I cannot tell you that it has been continued. But we can research that and see what we can come up with. Okay. The next recommendation is to expand on performance measurement. You have a very strong work measurement program, and it is effective. It's in your budget, and you clearly use it. What I'm suggesting is you have performance management, performance measurement in a number of areas. You need to expand that to the level that you have work management, because it gives you the result over the input in a way that simply work management does not. It's not enough to know, for example, that it's 62 trees. You also have to know it's $15,000. And that's the way you know what that performance really is. Very different than if it was 62 trees and $200. And so you can begin to measure your work output in a different way. And you're doing that to a certain extent. Our recommendation is just that you expand that. In the staffing comparison, we began with the 13 cities that we were provided. They are the ones I believe that are in your labor negotiations and other similar comparisons. And the problem with Public Works is that Public Works departments are very different community to community. So we went back in those 13 and tried to develop a consistency amongst the communities and use those as comparison. We came up with 5, and we looked at those 5, and they handle water the same way, water sourcing the same way, they treatment the same way, sewage collection, sewage treatment the same way. Similar kinds of functions and activities in those cities as there are in your city. And we came up with 5, and when we went across those 5, only one had fewer people than Wooddale. The other 4 were higher, and in some places substantially higher in terms of staffing. And I think that speaks very well to your use of your resources, the way you manage both generally and in the department, in addressing the issues that you have. It is perhaps, and I'll go to this a little further, but it is perhaps too close a management of that, in the sense that I think there are some needs there that needs to be addressed that aren't being addressed. And so once we completed the staffing comparison and talking through the interviews, the conclusion that we reached was that there really is need for an additional person in the department on the maintainer level in that range. There's a backlog. There was reference tonight, and there was also in a number of the interviews that I had with the 400 ash trees that have died, and the need to get rid of those. And that, as I understand it now, has been contracted out rather than done internally. But there are other elements of work that are backlogged in the Public Works Department that require attention. And as you move forward, and I think you've done an extraordinarily good job with Elgin O'Hare and that project in terms of planning and prepping, I still think it's gonna give you Public Works demands that you're gonna have to meet. So between what you have now and what you can anticipate later, I think you need to be aware you need a person in that position.
Okay, I have two questions. You're saying to hire recommendation is hire another person for the Public Works Division. Will that be an employee or a supervisor or a department head?
Employee,
Employee,
on the maintainer level. It's
okay.
your frontline
The
level.
maintainer.
Yeah, your frontline level.
The other thing is, I just don't know, and I did read your report. Couldn't see out there, so I asked for hard copy. I see a lot of questions asked about backlogs in this report. I don't see any backlog, so I don't know where you're getting that info, but I guess it might be something that may have to be done off.
It may very well.
I don't know, but I don't see any backlogs.
I will tell you the source of the information was the Public Works employees.
Okay. So we will.
Yeah, you'll,
Oh, go ahead.
I got one, I got a
oh,
question.
I thought you had a
Go
question.
ahead.
In your reports that you're going along here, are you looking at, I look at government, sometimes they're too top-heavy and not enough employees. Are we looking at the whole picture
Mhm.
of top-heavy and down, or?
Yes, you're looking at the whole department. There is
Okay.
in the report a departmental structure,
Okay,
a plan.
you,
And it wasn't my conclusion that you needed more senior management, middle management. It was the conclusion that you really need to put somebody on the front line.
okay. One more thing, you're doing reports on cities here. Have you do a comparison of public and private at all? You follow what I'm,
As Public Works or
No,
of
as
individual
a-
elements of Public Works?
as in public sector versus private?
You have the difficulty, for example, in water and sewer, that there are not a great many private water or sewer providers in this area at all. The city of Chicago probably provides the most volume of water to other cities. Some cities go directly, even in this area, pump it directly from the lake. Others take it from larger consolidated special districts. But there weren't any private that I ran across. And in sewer, the sewage treatment is almost completely public.
Okay.
And I would say that's largely the pattern around the country, too. Okay, the last element of this that I wanted to comment on was the Elgin O'Hare project. You've put money away for the future of this project for when it is completed or in the last stages of completion, where you might want to have an amendment to the plans that you know is going to be charged to you, that the state won't take it on themselves. You put money aside for that. You've prepared for the future impacts of this in many ways. And I think that's extraordinarily good planning. It's partly Public Works, but it's also the city as a whole, all of the departments, senior management, you as policymaker. And I think it's an extraordinarily well-done effort. And I think it's going to carry you through a lot of difficult times that other cities are probably going to experience that have not done that kind of planning. I want to reiterate again that the recommendations that I'm making here, I think are doable, some over a longer time than others, but are doable. But the critical issue here is keeping your leadership consistent. One of the problems in the department, according to the employees, has been that the directors have different focuses. And they just get used to one, and they have to change to another, and then they have to change to another. And that's debilitating for employees. By keeping the same director and keeping him in place, with these elements, among others, as part of his responsibilities, I think you can make a very, very good department even better. And I do want to underscore, I think it's a very good department. So with that, I'll conclude it. In debate.
As I mentioned, Lee McCain did the analysis in the police department. And when you looked at the staffing study, that stood out right away in terms of comparison to other cities of other just below 14,000 people. But his analysis was that, in essence, you can't compare it to another city of just under 14,000 people because you have 35 to 40,000 people here during the daytime hours. So based upon his analysis, he felt that the staffing in the police department was adequate. And he would not include, one of your last reports actually had a suggestion that it be increased, the patrol allocation report, and he did not agree with that. He felt that the level of staffing was appropriate in the police service. The two things that he would suggest, that he suggested, is that you consider the public safety answering point consideration in terms of combining with other cities to having a 911 answering center. They found that to be, a lot of cities around the country have found that to be a very, very cost-efficient way of providing 911 service to the citizens without eliminating the personal touch that comes with the well-staffed, well-trained 911 answering service. And then the other he suggested is to consider, right now you have patrol sergeants have portfolio duties or a number of other duties. There's 41 different portfolio duties, as he described it, for the 5 sergeants. And the potential you could consider as having a staff person who performed those types of duties. And then he also indicated that obviously the Elgin O'Hare project is going to have an impact on the police department as it develops into the future, and to monitor that. The information technology was also done by another person, Jerry Schultz, and his recommendations on page 363 and 64. If you have any questions about those, given my lack of knowledge of some of that stuff, I'd have to take the questions and get him to give you answer into the future. But I just wanted in the final one to give you a summation. This is my chart where I essentially think you describe a well-governed, well-managed, well-staffed city, with the left side being the leadership in the city, the middle circle being the management in the city, and the right circle being the delivery of services. And the leadership in the city is obviously the city council, with an overlap from the management providing you alternatives, policy suggestions, issues of that kind, and an overlap from the leadership to the management, making sure that the management policies are appropriately following through. On the right side, the delivery of services overlaps a bit with management, since management obviously is putting together the specifics of the delivery of service. It's when the 3 circles start combining and overlapping amongst the 3 is when you run into problems. If employees are directly essentially violating the policy and ignoring the policy direction of the city, you have a problem. If the policymakers are directly getting involved in the delivery of services, you have a problem. It creates tensions and it creates inefficiencies. And that's why having the 3 circles with the roles being played in those circles, to me, is very, very important to make sure that the overall organization is operating at its very best. And that chart is on page 69 in your report, and the handout of PowerPoints I gave you, it's pretty small, but it's on page 69 in broad perspective. One of the things that we did discover, by the way, as we went through this, is that we were able to, in our first run-through, do a very thorough analysis, and we didn't have the need to come back in and do intense second level, and we suggested to the city manager that we reduce our fee from what was originally accepted by you by $5,000. So we reduced it from the $24,500 down to $19,500, because we felt it just wasn't fair to charge the full fee in light of the reduced amount of effort that we had to put into it, because we did not find areas that we had to go into in great depth.
Yeah, that I would agree wholeheartedly. It is, I think it's a credit to the manager and the management team, to you all. It's also a credit to the employees who were open and gave us information easily and didn't require additional work. And overall, it was very much a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to do this.
So we would like to thank you for the opportunity
Thank you.
that we had to do this.
I have a couple of questions. Maybe in your report, you also, the recommendation is to dismantle the treasurer and, okay, not, and the city clerk. Is there a reason why that was in the report?
That was where we suggested that you, if you were able to take in home rule, then
Well,
you
that
have
falls
the
under home
option
rule.
to do that. Usually you elect your policymakers and appoint your administrative people. And if you had home rule, you'd be able to consider that as an option. But without home rule, and you apparently made the decision not to pursue home rule, then that's not an option.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Thank you for the discount. First. I find it very interesting, the employee survey finding. How often do you feel and that you should come back and do another, maybe not a full report, but go into details about that? Because up here, we don't know what the employers are saying. And we can't, and they're not, maybe they're not going to open up to department heads or whatever. So do you have a suggestion of saying, come back in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And do you have, instead of doing a full report, I'd like to know if there's and I'm sure it's gonna be a lot less than $15,000 just to do that little section. Do you have a suggestion with that? To
I don't
see
have a
if
firm
we're
suggestion, but
improving?
my mind would say like 2 years from now, if you're taking actions to do the employee survey again 2 years from now, it would be very easy to do since we've already developed the survey. And it's just a matter of you're distributing it. You took care of all that. Jeremy took care of distributing it, making sure it got distributed to all the employees and that they mailed it back. And it would not take too long to do the assessment.
Have you done something like this with other cities where you come back in 2 years and, or am I,
No, we have
am I
not in
going
terms of.
off the top a little crazy here?
No, we have not done that for the employee surveys. I can tell you that for citizen surveys, I'm actually a professor also at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, and our policy class does free surveys for the city of Oshkosh, except for the expenses and of mailing, and we do it every year. And they love having the comparative analysis of year by year as to what the citizens are saying in those types of matters, and it's provides some real input into their budget-making process.
I would like.
We could discuss it down the
Yeah,
line.
I would like them to come up with a
Well-
price and let the manager.
We'll discuss it in the committee meeting.
Right.
Right. Alderman Frank Kazar.
You know, if you could make this kind of a simple rating for us, if you would say from a scale of 1 to 10, as we sit right now, 10 being, you know, the highest score, how are we set with staffing and management right now, in your opinion?
How are you set up for?
Staffing. From
Staffing?
a scale of 1 to 10, how are we staffed?
Management staff or total
Management
staff?
Total. Managing and regular staff?
Right, both.
Both,
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being.
the highest.
Well-staffed and 1 being poorly staffed.
Right,
I would suggest you're in the 9.5 range.
okay, that's pretty good.
I don't think you should hear that as you're fully staffed and then some. I think as we look at that, 10 is correctly staffed.
Okay, that's even better.
Yeah.
That's correct. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I should have been more clear on that. That's why there's 2 of us here.
Jacob?
In the study, you talk about, you say the public works processes could benefit from the automated vehicle locator technology. Could you expand upon that a little bit?
That technology is basically tracking technology for vehicles, or you can also do it for people. And it gives management a better idea of the locations of their people at any given time. It can be translated into a, essentially, you know where they were all the time. But that is a system that's used in many cities, not just in the Public Works Department, but in police departments and other departments, fire departments and so forth, as a way of management understanding where their people are and what they're doing.
Mr. Jacob?
Based on your talk with the employees, was that something that people had asked about?
Not in Public Works.
Okay. Any other questions? I believe some of these issues that we will be talking about down the line. Okay.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for the gentleman?
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Item to consider, future meeting, water rates, November 13th. Tenant owner water meter billing. City code update. I'm going. Okay, I'm going. Okay, so when is some of it coming to us? Mr. Nervis.
Well, I mean, you had a police department one tonight. You had some ones that Jeremy brought forward at the last council meeting. I think we've got another 2 in the hopper, probably committee within the next month or so.
Okay. Any other items? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thanks.